So throughout Lent this year, we have focused on exploring the ways that we can make more room for God in our busy lives. The first week we talked about finding the right tempo to create space for grace. And then we looked at Psalm 23 and how we can find rest by trusting God to be our provider, our protector, and our guide. In the third week of Lent, the story of Mary and Martha showed how Jesus invites us to accept his gifts of peace and community. After that, we talked about letting go of the things that clutter our lives. And last week, we looked at Ecclesiastes and asked this question: do you know what time it is? Well, today we enter the last week of Lent, and our attention is drawn once again toward Christ as we move through the events of Holy Week. Now, as you read the Gospels, you might begin to realize that Jesus was kind of a busy dude, right? Just a little bit. He had thousands of people around him day and night. He had his own entourage that followed him everywhere he went. There were people who were hungry for food that came to him. People came to him desiring to hear him teach. People came to him desperate for some healing. In every town he went to, he received dozens of invitations and dozens of death threats. This guy was an A-list celebrity in first century Palestine. It was like he was Beyonce and Mother Teresa all rolled into one. Right? And yet, he managed to keep the hype from going to his head. He managed to stay calm in the midst of chaos, and he managed to always make time for the people and the things that really matter. So how can we follow Jesus' example to manage our own busy lives? Well, first, Jesus leaned on his community. You know, it's easy for us to think, oh, of course Jesus could do it all, right? He's God. Sure, he can do it all. But, you know, the thing is, Jesus was 100% divine, but he was also 100% human. He had all of the same weaknesses and fatigue in his body and his spirit that we have. He was constrained to the same 24-hour day that we are. And if he had given in to the temptation that we all have to try to do it all on his own, he would have burned out from compassion fatigue or collapsed from exhaustion 3 weeks into his ministry. Jesus knew that he couldn't go 24/7. And he knew that even if he did, there were more people in need than he could possibly help. So he recruited people to help him. He recruited the disciples and others to come around him to help him. He taught them what to do, and then he trusted them to help with the work. He built up a community of people like Mary and Martha, who were always there, who were always available, who were always in his corner, and he could count on them for prayer and encouragement and a meal and a listening ear when he needed it. They were the people that he could really be himself around, that he didn't have to be on for. And he could just kind of let his hair down. And we all need help carrying the load in our lives. We need a community of faith to keep us going. So what are you trying to do on your own that you need to recruit help for? Who are the people in your life that you need to lean on, that you can lean on for prayer and encouragement and support and advice? You need people around you who really get you. The people who have seen you at your worst and love you anyway. We all have those people, right? We don't even know why they stuck around, but they're there. Those people, the ones who will challenge you to be better. Hopefully some of those people are in this room with us. Having a community around us helps us to stay balanced. And see, Jesus, he leaned on his community, but he also kept his life in balance. Several times the Gospels writers included details about Jesus taking time out of his busy schedule to work in order to rest and to pray and to play. Every time that Jesus, the disciples were looking for him, where was Jesus? They go looking for him, they can't find him, and he got up early. He went off by himself to be alone with God. Or they're looking for him in the middle of a storm when they think they're all going to drown in the middle of the lake, and Jesus is back there sleeping, taking rest. He knew that he couldn't go on and on and on without recharging his body. And so he took the time to find balance, to rest, and to play in his life. In fact, he spent so much time eating and drinking and having fellowship with others that some folks accused him of being a glutton and a drunkard. You know, we need balance in our lives. Of course, we know that we can't play all the time. We know that we can't be couch potatoes and just stay glued to the screen, but we also can't spend our whole lives just going from one task to another without a break. We need sleep. Adequate sleep. I'm saying that for myself. I need adequate sleep. I don't do that. We need to play. We need to spend quality time with friends and family because we can't get that time back. Which means we have to prioritize our lives if we're going to experience the joy, Jesus first, others second, yourself third, that God has for us. So is your life in balance? Are you keeping Jesus first? You know, a few months ago, I noticed the tires on my car were getting pretty bald. And I knew that it was time for me to change and get new tires for my car. And, every time I'd go out there, I'd see them, I'd be like, I need to do that. And I'd be like, I don't have time for that this week. I'll take care of it next week. And then, of course, next week turns into the next week, turns into the next week. Anybody like that? Am I the only one that does that? Well, the thing is, Gary looked at Jody. Here's what happened. I ran out of time, y'all. And I was driving home from El Reno, and I had a blowout in my front left tire. Major. I mean, like the tire was shredded. I wasn't going anywhere. And so here I was on the side of the interstate, in the middle of the night, in 10-degree weather, with sleet coming down on my head, changing a tire because I didn't take the time to do it before. Because I didn't prioritize it and take care of it when I should have. And the thing is, God doesn't work on our schedule. You can't just give Jesus a few minutes on Sunday and expect him to show up whenever you want. You have to put Jesus at the top of your priority list, or you'll find yourself with a blowout on the side of the interstate of life. But here's the thing, y'all. Staying balanced and keeping our priorities straight doesn't have to be hard. It can be as simple as just taking a few minutes every day over breakfast to read your Bible, read a devotional, and just pray, God, give me what I need for today. Give me what I need to be a good husband, to be a good father, to be a good follower of you today. That's it. Just that will help you to become more aware and more mindful of God's presence in every moment of your day. And it'll help you live more intentionally. So Jesus leaned on his community. He kept his life in balance, and he was able to do that because he lived intentionally. The scripture that we read today was of Jesus' triumphant entry into Jerusalem. It was the first of the events in Jerusalem that led to the cross. But Jesus' journey to the cross didn't start there. You see, if you look back 10 chapters in Luke to Luke chapter 9, you'll find this one verse that seems just like a simple transition between two stories. Luke 9:51, it says, "As the time approached when Jesus was to be taken into heaven, he resolutely set out for Jerusalem." When you're reading it, and you're reading through, you almost miss it. In fact, I did miss it all the way up until last week. It was the first time I had ever noticed this verse. But this verse is huge. It's huge because it tells us that Jesus wasn't just thoughtlessly following a routine, that he wasn't just stumbling along reacting to things that happened to him and around him. He was resolute. He was intentional. He knew from the beginning where he was going and how he was going to get there. Which is a lot different than the way we often live our lives, right? You know, there's this experiment that was conducted a few years ago to test brain activity. And rats were put into this T-shaped maze. And there was a piece of chocolate put in the other side of it. And the first time they were put into the maze, the rats went and sniffed every single corner until they found the chocolate. And the sensors showed that their brain activity was just going the whole time, trying to figure out the maze. But what they did was they took the rat and they put him in the exact same maze over and over and over again. And over time, what they found when they measured the brain activity was that at the very beginning, when the rat got the cue to start the maze, their brain activity would spike. And at the end, when they found the chocolate, it would spike. But in the middle, their brain went on autopilot. And what the researchers determined from this experiment was that we, people, like those rats, have a tendency to go through the routines of our lives on autopilot. Just reacting to the chocolate that's in front of us. Now, routines aren't necessarily a bad thing because they help us to get work done efficiently in our lives. But routines can easily turn into ruts. And I heard somebody say one time that a rut is just a grave that's open on the ends. None of us wants to get into a rut or be in a rut. None of us wants to realize that we've wasted a chunk of our lives in the rat race. Because let's face it, even if you win the rat race, you're still just a rat. We weren't created to be rats. We were created for more than that. But in order to do that, we have to live intentionally. We have to live on purpose, thinking about what we do and why we do it and how we do it every day. Not just going through the motions. Now, one way that we can live intentionally is we can just regularly do something different. Regularly do something different. It's interesting, the Sabbath, we have a day devoted to doing something different. Regularly do something different that takes you out of the routine, makes you mindful of your routine. Think about your routine and think about the routines in your life. Are some of them unhealthy? Have some of them become ruts? Do some of them keep us from having balance and community in our lives? Jesus not only came to save us from death, but to teach us how to live. How to have life and to have it abundantly, as he puts it. And there's this world of difference between surviving and thriving. There's a world of difference between just not dying and really living. Jesus gives us an example to follow of a life well lived. He wasn't overwhelmed by the work in front of him because he leaned on his community. He was mindful and present in every situation because he kept his priorities straight and balanced. He wasn't distracted by the crowds of fans and haters because he was intentional about everything he did. Y'all, it's never too late for us to live life better and not let the busyness control our lives. And so this week, as we go into Holy Week, let us fix our eyes on Jesus and resolutely follow his example for living, so that we too may not just survive, but thrive. Let's pray. God, thank you for coming and giving us an example of how to live. Help us to pay attention to the example you set, and pay attention to our lives. Live intentionally. In your Son's name we pray. Amen.